This NBA offseason has been pretty crazy. It could be rivaling the 2019 offseason with all the crazy trades, the free agent signings, the crazy draft. But today, we're going to be grading every team's 2026 offseason. So that includes the NBA draft, all the free agent signings, all the big trades. But if you want to scroll to your team's grade, it'll be in the timestamps below. But before we start, make sure to like and subscribe so I can keep pushing out videos to you guys. But this should be a fun one, so let's get right into it. So the first team I have of the day here is going to be the Atlanta Hawks, and they didn't do too much, but I'm going to be giving them a B minus. They re-signed CJ McCollum. They declined Jonathan Kuminga's team option, which saved them $24.3 million in cap space. So they went out and used that money on Buddy Hield's contract and Muhammad Guy's contract. They also traded for Aaron Wiggins earlier in the offseason from OKC, and they only gave away two second round picks, so that was a good trade for them. They also picked up Devin Carter from the Kings, and in the draft they selected Kingston Flemings, which was a solid pick from them. So this is going to be a B minus grade for their offseason so far. The next team I have here is probably having one of the worst off seasons so far, and it's no other than the Boston Celtics. And I'm going to be giving them a D minus. Yes, they traded away their cornerstone player Jaylen Brown for a washed Paul George, but they also made some good signings in the free agency. They signed Mitchell Robinson, who won a championship last season. They got a good veteran shooter in Mike Conley, and they also gave Neemias Queta a 4-year, $56 million extension, which I kind of think is too much for how good he can be. But in the draft, they also selected Chris Nack, who can be a good rebounder, great defender. He needs to work on his jump shot a little bit. So yeah, the Boston Celtics are going to be giving a D minus for me. The next team I have here is the Brooklyn Nets, who I'm going to be giving a C. They had an unlimited cap space, and they didn't use much of it. But they also traded for Julius Randle. They traded away Nick Claxton, who has been their big for a couple of years now. But Julius Randle is not going to help this franchise in any way. He is going to help them this season, but not in the long term run. And in the draft, they selected Michael Brown Jr., who I thought is a great pick for them. Great shooter, can pass the ball pretty well. And they also, in free agency, signed Keon Ellis to a 2-year, $18 million deal. Not a bad, not a bad wing for them there. But they didn't do too much this offseason, which I think they should have done more because they had so much cap space. I thought they should have got out and got Mitchell Robinson, who went to the Celtics. But yes, this is going to be a C for me. So the next team I have here is going to be the Charlotte Hornets, who has had an up and down offseason, but I'm going to be giving them a B minus. Yes, they traded away their cornerstone player LaMelo Ball for Naz Reid and a couple of first round swaps, which I think was a terrible trade for them. But they also got the steal of the draft, in my opinion, Christian Anderson Jr., who can develop to be their starting point guard for a couple of seasons. And they also traded away Miles Bridges for Grayson Allen, Royce O'Neal, and another 2033 first round pick, which I think was a great trade for them. So that kind of balances out the LaMelo Ball trade. But they didn't do too much in free agency. I don't think they really signed anybody at all. So this is going to be a B minus, in my opinion. The next team I have here is actually having quietly one of the best off seasons, and it's the Chicago Bulls, who I'm going to be giving an A minus. They got one of the best steals of the draft, in my opinion, Dalen Swain. Great shooter, great defender at the guard position. And they also got one of the other best defenders in the draft, Caleb Wilson, who can be a great lob threat for Josh Giddey. And they also got Nick Claxton in the three-way Julius Randle trade, who gives them flexibility and cap space, not too pricey of a big. He's not the best starting big in the world also. They also signed Norman Powell, one of my favorite free agents this year, who signs a 2-year, $45 million deal with them. He's one of the best scorers in the league. He made an All-Star appearance last season with the Heat. And they also re-signed Zach Collins to a 2-year, $17 million deal, which I kind of think is too much. So that's why I gave them an A minus. Zach Collins is not the greatest big, and signing him for $17 million is not the best for the Bulls. The next team I have here didn't really do much this offseason, and it's the Cleveland Cavaliers, who I'm going to be giving a C to. Um, they didn't re-sign any of their main key guys from last season, like Keon Ellis, Deion Wade. They gave Donovan Mitchell a crazy contract, over $200 million, 4 years, something like that. They didn't re-sign James Harden yet. who I think is going to be resigned with him, which I think they shouldn't. I think he's giving up too much money. They should go out and get some other guys, maybe possibly LeBron James. In the draft, they didn't have a first round pick, so in the second round, they got Malik Thomas from Arkansas, who I thought was a great athletic wing. Who's going to bring them good shooting off the bench, I guess. But this is going to be a C for me. The next team I have is the Dallas Mavericks, who I'm going to be giving a B minus to. They got a new head coach, Jussie May from Michigan, and alongside him, he brings in Morris Johnson Jr. from Michigan as well, who I don't think was the greatest pick. They should have picked Braden Burries. But after the draft, they traded for Santi Aldama, who I think is one of the most underrated shooters in today's game. After that, they didn't really do much. They re-signed Derek Lively, and that's about it. So B minus from the Dallas Mavericks here. The next team is the Denver Nuggets, who I'm going to be giving a D to. They should be doing more. They should have got out and tried to get Jaylen Brown from the Celtics. And they didn't have any first round picks either because of the Cam Johnson trade. So they end up selecting in the second round Bryce Hopkins. And they also re signed Tyus Jones. So, yes, a D from the Nuggets. They should be doing a lot more to get better. The next team I have is the Detroit Pistons, who I'm going to be giving a B plus to. They had some three-point struggles last season, and they fixed that this offseason with getting John Collins in free agency, who shot 40.6% from deep last year, and Isaiah Joe, who shot 42.3% from the field last year. And they only gave away 2 second-round picks for Isaiah Joe. And in the draft, they got one of the most electric point guards, in my opinion. He's also very young, Ibuka Okori from Stanford, who can play alongside Caden Cunningham, can develop and be a great point guard in this league. So not a bad offseason at all for the Pistons, but they also still have questions with Jalen Duren. I think they should re-sign him back. I don't know who their big would be this next season. And they also didn't re-sign Tobias Harris, who went to my Spurs. So they got some good players and also lost some. The next team I have is going to be the Golden State Warriors, who I'm going to be giving a B minus to. Yes, there's still speculations with LeBron James because Draymond Green declined his player option, giving room for him. But there hasn't been a lot of news lately. There were speculations they were going to trade for Anthony Davis, but that's out the window. As of now, they only signed some of their older guys back, like Kristaps Porzingis, DeAnthony Melton, and Al Horford. So they haven't done too much. And in the draft, they selected Yaxel Lindenberg, who I don't think was the worst pick in the world, but they kind of need to get younger. I know they're trying to win one more with Stephen Curry, but not a bad offseason at all for the Warriors here. The next team I have here is going to be the Houston Rockets. We're going to get a B minus from me. They picked up guys like Marcus Smart, Bogdan Bogdanovic in free agency, who I don't think were terrible signings at all. They picked up Tari Eason to a 5-year, $82 million deal, which I kind of think is overpaying him for how good he can be. They also have trade speculations with Kevin Durant possibly still. They picked up Fred VanVleet's $25 million player option. So just a bunch of nothing for the Rockets here. The next team I have is the Indiana Pacers, who are going to get a C plus for me. They literally have done nothing this offseason besides Kelly Oubre Jr., who they signed to a 2-year, $17 million contract. They didn't have any first-round picks from the Zubac trade. So literally nothing has been done in Indiana this offseason. So just a C plus for me. The next team I have here is going to be the Los Angeles Clippers, who I'm going to be giving a B plus to. They traded away Kawhi Leonard for good value, like Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, a couple of future firsts, which I think was good value out of that. In the draft, they selected Keaton Wagler with the 5th overall pick, which I don't think was the worst pick in the world, but I do think they should have gone with Darius Acuff, who can be a franchise player. Not saying Keaton Wagler can't be that, but I think Darius Acuff has more upside than him. But not a bad offseason at all for the Clippers. I do think they're trying to reshape their franchise, trying to reset and rebuild off of their younger core. So not a bad offseason at all for the Clippers here. Staying in the city of LA, I have the Los Angeles Lakers, who I'm going to be giving a B minus to. Yes, LeBron James is going to be not a Laker next year. He's going to be somewhere else. They traded for Walker Kessler in a terrible trade, which I think they lost. They gave up some valuable first-round picks. They also signed some guys in free agency like Quentin Grimes, Sandro Mamakosvali, Colin Sexton. So they got a good core now around Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves. And in the draft, they selected one of my favorite players, Cohen Carr from Baylor, who I think is one of the most electric dunkers of the draft. Great pick from the Lakers, but they did trade for Walker Kessler, who didn't play over 5 games last season, for 2 first-round picks, which I think was a terrible trade. So this is going to be a C plus for me. The next team here is going to be the Memphis Grizzlies, who have had a crazy offseason so far, and I'm going to be giving them a B minus. They've had one of the best draft classes in their franchise history, drafting Cameron Boozer and Kareem Lopez in the first round, which I think was great picks for them. After the draft, they obviously traded Ja Morant to the Portland Trailblazers for Jeremiah Grant and Chris Murray. I think that was a terrible trade for the Grizzlies there. They could have got a lot more value out of him. And they also landed Isaiah Stewart for a trio of seconds. And then they also traded Santi Aldama to the Mavericks, which gave them more cap space to pay some of their younger guys after their rookie contracts expire. So yes, not a bad offseason for the Grizzlies at all. The next team I have here is going to be the Miami Heat, who I'm going to be giving a B plus to. Yes, they reshaped their whole entire roster, trading for Giannis, giving away a lot of their young core and a lot of first round picks. But Giannis is going to bring them a championship next year, and you better believe it. Giannis and Bam is going to be one of the most electric duos we've seen in a while, probably since Shaq and Kobe. But after that, they didn't do too much. They didn't re-sign Norman Powell, who went to the Chicago Bulls, but they also re-signed a veteran shooter in Tim Hardaway Jr., who's going to be their shooter next season. So not a bad pickup for the Miami Heat at all. So yes, this is a B plus grade for them. The next team I have here is on the other side of the Giannis trade, and it's the Milwaukee Bucks, who I'm going to be giving an A minus to. I do think they got a lot of good value out of the Giannis trade, getting young players like Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, Casper Jackie Jonas, 3 firsts, which they used some of them this year, getting Braden Burries and Nate Ament, who I think were some of the best picks of the lottery drafts. Braden Burries is one of my favorite prospects coming out of college. Obviously, a great shooter, great floor general. Nate Ament can bring that shooting upside, can become a better scorer. They also, in free agency, re signed Ousmane Dieng's 3 year, $17 million contract. So the Milwaukee Bucks are trying to change their future, and I do think they are headed in the right direction. So not a bad offseason at all from the Bucks. The next team I have is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who I'm going to be giving an A minus to. They trade for LaMelo Ball, who, when healthy, is one of the best shot creators in the entire NBA. They only give away Naz Reid, an unprotected 2033 first-round pick, in 3 seconds. They also trade away Julius Randle, getting rid of his contract, which was terrible. They get a $33 million trade exemption from that, and they hand over Ayo Dosunmu a 5 year, $112 million deal. But Minnesota is going to be a contender next year with LaMelo Ball and Anthony Edwards. It's going to be an electric duo. So be ready for the Timberwolves because they're going to be really good next season. So not a bad offseason at all for the Timberwolves. The next team is the New Orleans Pelicans, who I'm going to be giving an F minus to. They have done nothing to get better. They didn't have any first round or second round picks this season. They re-signed DeAndre Jordan to a 1 year deal, who's like 50 years old. I guess they pick up on Kevin Looney's team option, and they pick up Carlo Matakvocic's team option. But they need to do something to get better. Trade Zion, trade Trey Murphy, trade DeJounte Murray, trade anybody to get better. So an F minus grade for the Pelicans. The former NBA champions, New York Knicks, are going to get a B minus from me. They haven't done much this offseason. They re-signed Mo Diawara, Jose Alvarado, and Landry Shamet, but they didn't have any first-round picks because they traded away the 24th pick to the Lakers. And they also didn't re-sign Mitchell Robinson, who went to the Celtics. So I do think they got worse, but they haven't done anything crazy to reshape their roster. So not much from the Knicks here. The next team I have is Oklahoma City Thunder, who I'm going to be giving a B minus to. They re-signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a 3 year, $75 million deal. They also traded away Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins, netting 4 second rounders. And they also declined Kenneth Williams' team option, but later re-signed him for $5 million. But they also had one of the best draft classes, in my opinion, drafting Ade Mara, a 7'3" rim protector, to pair alongside Chet Holmgren, relieving some pressure off of him. And they also draft Bennett Sturts, a good point guard who's probably going to play behind Shea. But not a bad offseason at all for the Oklahoma City Thunder here. The next team is the Orlando Magic, who haven't done much this offseason. They waived Jonathan Isaac to save $6.5 million. They also re-signed Nikola Vucevic, who was their longtime center for most of his career, trying to have a farewell tour, I guess. And they also pick up Jamal Cain's $2.6 million team option. But they didn't have any first round picks or second round picks. So not anything much to say about the Magic here. This next team might have had one of the best off seasons I've ever witnessed. And it's the Philadelphia 76ers. We're going to get an A plus 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 for me. Yes, they traded away Paul George for Jaylen Brown. They're gonna have a super team next year. I don't. It's still crazy for me, but in free agency they signed Dion Wade to a 4-year, $39 million deal, and Anthony Simons to a 2-year, $12.3 million deal, and they also draft one of my favorite players from Alabama, LeBaron Philon, at the number 22 pick. He fell way too far, and the 76ers grab him. Great pick there. And there's also speculations that LeBron James might be going here. So this offseason for the 76ers might be even getting better. But yes, the 76ers have had one of the best offseasons in my lifetime. Definitely. The next team is the Phoenix Suns, who I'm going to be giving a C minus to. They re-signed Colin Gillespie to 4 years, $48 million, Jordan Goodwin to a 3-year, $19 million, and Mark Williams to 3 years, $38 million. So all those contracts are kind of expensive for the Suns. But they do trade for Miles Bridges, giving away Royce O'Neal and Grayson Allen, and a 2027 second round pick, and an unprotected 2033 first round pick. They gave up way too much for a player that isn't an all-star caliber player in Miles Bridges. So this offseason hasn't been too exciting for the Suns, but they also pick up Kobe Pete in the NBA draft. I kind of think he fell a little bit. I do like him as a prospect. A good floor general at that power forward position. So not too good, not too great for the Suns here. The next team I have is the Portland Trailblazers, who are going to get an A minus. They get out of the Jeremiah Grant's bad contract, trading for John Morant, former All NBA cornerstone, but he has been on the decline lately, facing injuries and off the court issues. But he's still a great player when he's healthy. And they also re-signed Robert Williams to a 3-year, $44 million contract. And also getting Damian Lillard back is going to be huge for them. So expect the Trailblazers to be good again next season. Not bad at all for the Trailblazers this year. And then the Sacramento Kings, they're gonna get a B plus for me. I think they got one of the best draft picks of the draft, Darius Acuff Jr., who's gonna be an all-star guard, not this year, but in a couple of years. They also waived DeMar DeRozan's contract, which I think is huge, saving a lot of cap space. His contract is way too expensive. Domantas Sabonis is still in trade talks, but he's probably still going to stay on the team this year. And they also picked up Zach LaVine's $49 million player option. So not bad for the Kings here. They're still going to be a bad team, but getting Darius Acuff is so huge. The next team is my San Antonio Spurs, who I'm going to be giving an A to. No bias. They've had a really good offseason. In the NBA draft, they select Jaden Quaintance and Terrace Reed Jr., who's going to be two good backup bigs behind Wembanyama. Great athletes right there. We also reshaped Julian Champagne's contract, getting him for $45 million over the next 3 years, which is a great contract for how good he is. We also get Harrison Barnes back on a 1-year, $8 million deal. And we also pick up Tobias Harris in free agency, which I think is one of the best additions of the offseason so far for us. Tobias Harris is a great veteran scorer, which we kind of needed in the NBA Finals run. There's still questions with De'Aaron Fox, though. I do think we should still probably trade him for a couple of first-round picks. But he's still on the team. So the San Antonio Spurs are going to be a lot better next year. Still finals contenders. The next team is the Toronto Raptors, who get their guy back, Kawhi Leonard, and they're going to get a B plus for me. They traded away Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, 2 future firsts, for somebody that can bring them to a championship once again. He already did it in 2019. They also lost Mamaka, but Colin Murray-Boyles is ready for a larger role. He's going to be a better player next year. They also pick up Allen Graves, who I don't think is the best pick in the NBA draft. There's some questions with his offensive game. But the Toronto Raptors are going to be good next year. Expect them to be contenders. The second to last team I have is the Utah Jazz, who's going to get an A minus for me. They got one of the best players in the draft, Darren Peterson, who I think is going to be an all-star caliber player, maybe even this year. They also traded away Walker Kessler for a couple of first-round picks, which I think they really won that trade. They got a lot of value over somebody that didn't play over 5 games last season. They also re-signed Yusuf Nurkic to a 2-year, $22 million deal, and they also signed a backup big, Jackson Hayes, to a 2-year, $12 million deal. So some great additions for the Jazz here. A minus grade. The last team I have is the Washington Wizards, who are going to get a C plus for me. The only reason their grade is bad is because of Trae Young's contract. 4 years, $212 million for somebody that hasn't played a lot in the last couple of seasons. He's a good point guard when healthy, but he's kind of getting up in age. They keep Anthony Davis, though. There were some trade rumors that he's going to get traded to maybe Golden State, but they end up keeping him. They also select AJ Demancia with the first overall pick. He's going to be an all-star caliber player, maybe an all-NBA player in a couple of years. So the Wizards are going to be good next season, but that Trae Young contract is going to set them back. So there you have it. That is every grade for every team's 2026 offseason. If you like this kind of video content, make sure to like and subscribe so I can keep pushing out these videos to you guys. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.